The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Glory to you, Lord. At that time, Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. He fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, and afterwards he was hungry. The tempter approached and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command these stones become loaves of bread." He said in reply, "It is written, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God." Then the devil took him to the holy city and made him stand on the parapet of the temple and said to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down. For it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "Again it is written, you shall not put the Lord your God to the test." Then the devil took him up to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their magnificence. And he said to him, "All these I shall give to you, if you will prostrate yourself and worship me." At this Jesus said to him, "Get away, Satan. It is written, the Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone shall you serve." Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and ministered to him. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. There was a Catholic priest that was working in an inner city parish, and one evening he was walking down the alley on his way home when this young man came up from behind him and put a knife into his back and said, "Give me your money." The priest opened his jacket and reached into his inner pocket to remove his wallet, exposing his clerical collar. "Oh, I'm sorry, Father," said the young man. "I didn't see your collar. I don't want your money." Trembling from that scare, the priest removed a cigar from his pocket and offered it to the young man. "Here," he said, "have a cigar." "Oh, no, I can't do that," the young man said. "I gave that up for Lent." There's a strange line in today's gospel that I really think we should discuss, because if we understand this line correctly, it can show us the way to a very profitable Lenten observance. In 3 of the 4 Gospels, Jesus is tempted by the devil before he begins his public ministry. This temptation happens in the desert. And here is where the problematic line is. It says, "And Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil." So why would the Spirit of God lead Jesus into temptation? I mean, we would expect God's Spirit to lead Jesus away from the devil's temptation. And yet this text is very clear that the Spirit brings Jesus right into the devil's presence. What sense can we make of this unexpected and contrary action on the part of the Spirit? Well, the Bible really doesn't give us an explanation. But here's the basic rule. When the Spirit of God does something to Jesus or to us, we can be sure that that action is for our benefit. And therefore, this strange line in the gospel suggests that there is a goodness or an advantage to temptation. It suggests that there's something to learn from being tested that will actually lead to our spiritual growth. So what is it that we can learn from temptation? Well, 2 things come to mind immediately. The first is this: when we are tempted, we realize that we are weak When things are going along with no problems, when we move from one success to another, it's really easy for us to imagine that it is our own strength and our own abilities that guarantee a successful life. But when we experience temptation, we have to admit that our abilities and our strengths are limited. After all, we could fall with just a simple change of the circumstances or a bad decision on our part. Our family, our job, our reputation could actually be undone. And so temptation shows us just how fragile life is. It reminds us that a successful life results not from our own efforts, but from God's grace. Temptation shows our weaknesses, and it invites us to trust God even more deeply. The second good thing that can come from temptation is that it gives us a direction. The areas in which we're tempted are the surest signs of what actions are required in our life. For example, if we find ourselves tempted to be self-indulgent, to do very little, to eat too much, to cater to our own desires, that temptation is telling us that there is too much taking and not enough giving in our lives. So, Lent becomes a time to get out of the bag of potato chips, to turn the television off, to turn that computer off, and choose some action of service that will help someone else. If we find ourselves time and again becoming angry, maybe vengeful toward someone who's hurt us, then that temptation is telling us that we are wounded. Lent becomes a time in which we open ourselves up to healing and forgiveness, because it's only through forgiveness that we truly become free. Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil, because the Spirit understood that Jesus, in his humanity, would learn something from that temptation. And so can we. This Lenten season is a time to ask ourselves, where am I tested? Where am I tempted? And then allow our temptations to give us the direction on which we should spend these next 40 days. And if following that path, we discover that things are difficult, that it's not easy to address issues in our relationships, it's not easy to serve, it's not easy to forgive, we should not become discouraged, because temptation also tells us that we are weak. It assures us that we're not alone, and it invites us to put our trust in God's help. During these 40 days of Lent, examine your life. See where God is leading you. What temptations are being placed in your life? And learn from God what needs to be addressed to make you truly free to accept His grace and His mercy. Happy Lent. Amen.